reasoning has to be tied to understanding what data is necessary to improve towards a goal. I think that is, in my opinion, where reasoning actually hits, where the rubber hits the road when it comes to reasoning. For example, in the math symposium at Stanford that I'm attending, it's a 2-day symposium about the future of AI and math. There's one interesting presentation by an OpenAI researcher who talks about how uh, the model was able to prove something, and it found a certain paper from 2012 that helped the model solve the problem. And I think that to me illustrates the actual value of reasoning, which is what data do I need to get better at pursuing my goal? That should be the fundamental question that an AI asks itself when reasoning. I think we're kind of getting there, and the lines are a bit blurred because if we kind of anthropomorphize reasoning, it it comes from reasoning what's in me. Like I think to myself, I introspect, I think about what do I know. And a lot of that is true. I think part of why we do this podcast, for example, is because we want to have not just a record of how we think, but while we're articulating what we're thinking, we often also reveal new ideas about what we're thinking. So there's definitely an introspection, but I think there's also a sort of outrospection where we have a certain way of thinking, and now what new data do I need to actually learn my task better? So if I want to be able to surf certain waves, or let's say it's my goal to become a professional surfer, the new data that I need is I need to test different types of conditions, different types of waves, different types of boards. So, I mean, that's obvious, but I think we often as humans do that, right? We think, okay, what is it we need to get better? But I think once we industrialize this idea, um, it has a lot more legs because anything which is conducive to learning from data is going to be successfully solved with AI. So you can flip this question around and say, well, if you want to do anything with AI, you have to make it conducive to learn from data. And then the question comes, what data? Also, of course, what is learning? How do I learn? In other words, what algorithms can be used? But most importantly, what data do we need to actually be able to learn a certain task? And I think a robot, particularly a robot moving in the physical world with this type of approach, this type of architecture, will have this ability that Sergey was talking about, and I mentioned in the previous episode, where we want to have autonomous systems that bootstrap themselves and learn by doing, or to paraphrase also Dick Sutton, in the era of experience, I think one of the ideas of what Sutton calls options, or new tasks that you add to your repertoire, the idea of new tasks has to start with, okay, what data do I need? Is this even a task where I can learn from data? For example, if I want to learn how to surf 50-foot waves, well, I can't just go and surf 50-foot waves. That's not conducive to learning from data. So I have to find another way, and maybe there is no other way, and maybe that's why it's such a rare sport. I'm just saying some things are conducive to learning from data. So if you want to learn how to do jiu-jitsu, that is very conducive to learning from data. That's why people love it so much, because you can drill, and that drilling is conducive learning from data. You can do the same thing again and again and again. You don't have to make frog leaps. You don't have to, reinvent the wheel. You can just learn incrementally every day a little bit more and get better. And that's something that I think humans in general prefer, because it's a low risk, high return way. requires a lot of time investment and commitment, which is something that we have as humans, versus, for example, riskier stuff like the 50-foot wave, or those types of things. In the investment, would be putting a highly concentrated position in a high risk, high return situation. There's not a lot. It's difficult. This is not very conducive to learning from data. So you have to find different ways to solve that problem if you chose to go into that direction. Thank you.